Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us tonight for the Athletics Coaches Training webinar. My name is Kendall Zeslitz. I am the new staff lead from Special Olympics who will be running the athletics program this year. And I'm also joined by Don Bewick, who is a track or athletics coach from St. Mary's County, and he will actually be running tonight's training. So with that being said, Don, take it away.
Okay. Hi, everyone. I'm Don Bewick. I coach track from St. Mary's County. I am just opening the PowerPoint now, and we'll get going in a second. Basically, just to give you a rundown of what we're going to plan to do, I got the first few slides of kind of like preseason general stuff, and then I go into some drills, and then I go into some techniques for each event, and then I end with like a resource page. So if we go to slide 2, the agenda is kind of as follows. We'll go preseason and then practice setup, scoring, some information if you have to host a qualifier, some actual guidelines for competition, equipment considerations. I have a layout of the track, I have some drills, and then I go into the individual events, running events, long jump, high jump, mini jab, shot put, relays, hurdles, and resources. So if we can go to slide 3. This is the kind of the preseason pre-track and field. I'm sure most counties do something similar, but you got to figure out a way to get a registration of athletes. We use a Google form registration format for online registrations. Unfortunately, we have to use some. Not all athletes have access to computers, so we do use a paper formatted registration as well. And during this process, we also we check on medicals, whose medicals expiring during the season, and we obey by the Special Olympics policy. So we make sure we have the current medicals. Based on the number of athletes, it's good to probably keep them in a binder, somewhat organized. And then also during the preseason, we kind of set up a plan for the potential events for each athlete. Every athlete that's competed in the past, usually those don't change a whole lot, but there could be some changes. And then we also, if there's new athletes, we kind of try to figure out how to work those athletes in. And then we'll also develop a plan to notify athletes if practice is canceled. And then we'll generally talk over this kind of stuff at a preseason meeting with coaches and volunteers to kind of get a sense at how the season is going to go. Next slide. Here's our practice setup. At St. Mary's County, we usually only practice once a week. We may practice during the week if we have something specific. Like if we want to work on relays, or if for some reason we lost a practice, or we're concerned that people just aren't getting the activities right. But generally, we only have one session. We typically do not have any athletes that compete in long distance. But if you do have athletes that compete in longer events over 400 meters, definitely you should practice 2 or 3 times a week to build endurance. And we also at the end will provide some drills and exercises if the athlete can do at their home if they desire. Kind of the overall kind of practice setup per se is we'll have the athletes do a warm-up lap, which is kind of like just like a light jog or a walk around the track. we'll stretch as a group, and then we'll divide the athletes into groups. They'll go to either specific event training, or we'll have them do conditioning or endurance drills, or any type of drills. And then we have at least one coach at each station, sometimes more. And then we'll end with a practice of kind of a cool down, light stretching at the end. We make sure we have plenty of water during practice, and we make sure the athlete knows the importance of drinking water, not only during practice but during the week, which to help avoid any dehydration or muscle injuries. Next slide, slide 5. This slide's just kind of on scoring. This can be a pain because you kind of need a lot of help, especially if you're timing or for running events. But we will tend to do this on one practice, just to get like an entry for the first competition. Now we will also look at previous scores and your scores, and then kind of use just a baseline, because the practice scores is kind of hard to get an actual competition score out of practice, but it just gives you kind of a guideline. And then for any new athlete, we try to get scores just as soon as possible. So A, we know kind of what ability they are. B, kind of know what event they should be in, and we recommend having this all compiled into one spreadsheet. That way you can go look back at previous scores, new scores, and then if you're setting up a competition, it makes it very easy to kind of sort everything. And then for the actual summer games, I will use the competition scores, and they're not going to be every competition. They're going to be varying. So you kind of have to just look at them and see which actually fits best. But make sure you look at the scores, because sometimes there are mistakes, and also understand the conditions of the competition. If it's really cold, if it's really hot, if it's really windy, that can make a difference. And then and if something just doesn't make sense, you just may want to just recheck at practice, just to see, as a confidence check that your scoring is correct. Slide 6. Okay, slide 6 is hosting a qualifier. Feedback from hosting a qualifier. My computer just froze for a second, so hopefully it comes right back. Okay, St. Mary's the past I don't know how long, but we host the school-based spring games every year. That we have about 200 athletes compete, and we have a very short time window. There's several logistic items that we have to work out. Getting the number of volunteers. We assign each athlete an escort. We have food. We have T-shirts. We have field setup. We have equipment. But below, I'm going to provide some few tips on actually handling the competition itself. As far as the scores go, we normally just use Excel, and we sort the scores based on their sorting in Excel, and then we divide the athletes into groups based on the age and ability. You can also kind of do this in GMS as well, but we have everything kind of already in Excel, so it kind of makes it easier, and especially with athletes that don't usually go to summer games, everything's already in there. And then the big trouble is we do a manual time event entry. So we manually go in and put the actual heats into time slots. Um, since we only have like 2 hours, and to avoid any conflicts, we go from the first running events, and then we'll go to we run 2 running events, and then we have 2 jumps, we have 3 throws, and we have a shot put. We kind of just go from the beginning, and then we kind of just put the events in. If a question I have for the group, and maybe others do this better, but if there's a software or program where it kind of source it and check this already, that would be good to know, because this does take a little bit of a time, but this is the best way we found that we can do this to avoid any conflicts. And then our actual competition is set up just like summer games. We have one head official, which is usually a St. Mary's coach, or somebody involved in the program, and then we have a specific number of volunteers at each event. And we do the same thing with awards. So we have someone, a Special Olympic St. Mary's representative, in charge of the awards, and then we have volunteers. For the track, we do have a couple extra coaches. We have somebody, a head timer, and then we'll have a starter, and then we'll have somebody kind of in charge of staging. We make sure each official has a radio, and once we know the scratches, for our competitions, schools come in, so we know who's not going to be here. So once the scratches are known, they get entered directly into the heating events and heat books, and then that way they'll be just kind of removed from the competition, and the competition can go on. There still are some mistakes. Sometimes somebody not know that someone scratched, but for the most part, we kind of handle this pretty good. And then we provide each venue a packet of information along with heat sheets. We have a heat book. We also provide, Mike refers to it as an MLB file, but it's a time chronological running order of all events, and that's very helpful for anyone staging, because you can just cross out the athlete once they're staged and everything in direct order. And kind of a tip is make sure you have water at kind of each event, including awards, especially if they're waiting for a little while or if it's warm. So those are kind of tips that we use for hosting a qualifier. I'm sure there's others, but that's just kind of what I came up with. Okay, we can go to slide 7. Yeah, this is kind of some tips for during the competition. And for examples, at summer games, we will typically have between 40 and 45 athletes. So here's some things that we provide. Make sure you have radios, tents, water, towels, sunscreens, first aid kit, athletic tape, etc., just available, because you never know when you might need it, and having all that stuff is good. For summer games, we'll have, and we'll do this at any local competition as well. We'll make sure we have at least one coach assigned to each staging area with the running file, and then they're kind of in charge of making sure the athletes get to the staging in time. We'll have other people help them out as far as getting the athletes there, but we'll have one coach kind of be at the staging. So A, to make sure the athlete gets staged in time. B, if there's conflicts, they're talking directly to the representatives, letting them know where the athlete's at, and we found that fairly useful. And then they can also help stretch the athletes if they're waiting for a while as well. So we found it useful to have someone at each staging area there the whole time. We have each coach. We assign directly 3 to 5 athletes for each coach. Sometimes they'll get swapped around during the day. If a couple athletes are done for the day and others aren't, they may go back with others. But we will have a coach assign 3 to 5 athletes for summer games. And then for events that got a lot of people in a short period of time, we'll even do a pre-staging where, like, for 100 meters, we'll have them staged in the bleachers all ready to go. And then once they call their heat number, they'll go on their way. We do that for the 100 meters and relays. It just makes it a little bit easier. And then instead of trying to find people. And then another thing is, I mean, the track events are long. And, have a plan in place to have the athletes be occupied during town times, and try to, if they're not at the competition, if they're done with the competing events, have them make sure that, like at summer games, we'll make sure that they get changed or they'll go back to the dorms when they're done competing. So this is a little trick to have because there is some long periods of time between events. Slide 8. This is equipment. Just going over some things that you can that you may not think of, but track spikes. Use them for jumping and sprinting events. Not all athletes like to wear them, but we encourage the athletes to use them, especially for any higher ability athletes. They're meant for running, meant for jumping. And then we'll make sure that they practice them so they get used to them. And if you're looking for places to get the actual shoes, it's Ross and Marshalls always has them for fairly cheap. But most of our athletes buy their own, but sometimes we have to we'll purchase some for individual athletes. Starting blocks. We have a couple that we have used in the past for training. It does require a lot of time to use them properly, but they will benefit the athlete in the sprinting events if they're done right. So it's just something to keep in mind. And especially if it's younger athletes, are probably going to be using them if they compete for like a high school program. And then kind of the last thing on the equipment, starter pistols and blanks. It can be hard to find blanks during the season, as I found out the last couple of years. A lot of places run out quick, so try to get these early. Most of the track and field stores have them, but they do sell out early. So I know we have both 22 and 32 caliber starter pistols. The 22 caliber blanks run a little bit cheaper than the 32 caliber, but you may not be able to find them. So just note that they can go quickly. And then we'll go on to the next slide 11. Slide 9. And the next two slides are just kind of a typical layout of 4x100 tracks. This one doesn't have a 4x200 relay marking on there, but it does have the relay markings for the 4x100, and it gives you where the exchange zones are for the 3 legs, and along with it gives you the start lines for the 1500, 200, and the 800 meter start. If we go on to the next slide 10, this gives you a little bit more markings. It doesn't have the relay markings on there, but it does show you the break line for the 800 and 4x400, and along with all the start lines, and then the actual dimensions. I couldn't find a picture with tracks. It's got 4x200 meter markings, but they'll be usually in a different color than the 4x100 set up at the 200 and at where the first leg is. And typically the track will mark them at the very beginning of where the what relay markings are, but just note that every track colors aren't all the same, and all the tracks that we run in use triangles for the for relay markings, but not all tracks have that. So some tracks have different markings for the relay zones. Just take that note. If we go on to slide 11, these are some track and field drills that you can do, in the beginning of practice, during practice, at the end, they can do during the week. Some basic ones are high knees, skip jumps. Those are good for any jumping events. Butt kicks, A skips, B skips. Those are good. A skips and B skips are good for running form. You can do some lunges. You can do 1 foot jumps. You can do 2 foot jumps. You can do ladder drills. And then one of the things we like to do is, something like around the track, athlete runs 100 meters, then jogs 100 meters, runs 100 meters, jogs 100 meters. And then you can do that for any real distances, but if you do that once, they're kind of fairly tired. And then if you add to it, it's a pretty good drill. And another drill we like to do is kind of single file line drills, where we group athletes, kind of similar ability, in groups of 4 or 5. And basically they're jogging as a group around the track, and the person in back will sprint to the front, and this just keeps happening around the track. So you're building endurance and also, working on acceleration and stuff. And there's a few links here that I provided. They're good. That you take a look at them if you can. It gives you details on how to do the drills. Kind of hard to explain in a PowerPoint, but actual visuals are a big help with the drills. If you want to go on to the next slide, slide 12. Now we're going to actually go into the sports-specific events. These are we're going to first start with the running events. I think every athlete we have does some sort of running event. And Special Olympics offers anywhere from 25 meters to 10 kilometers, and this will include walking or running or walking events. And then the key point for any race is make sure you get a clean start. Athlete doesn't false start, isn't moving, and then the athlete's staying in their lane for events that require lanes, and make sure the athlete knows where to actually break out of your lane for the longer events. Make sure they finish through the finish line. Sometimes athletes will slow down as they're coming through, so make sure that if they're running, make sure they run through, or if they're in a walk event, that they're walking at the same pace through the finish line. And then always finish the race by leaning your body forward as they judge the torso of the body, and not necessarily where the feet is. And then kind of determining what events the athletes should go into. I mean, we'll try to get feedback from them, but basically, if the athlete can complete the event if it's a running event in their normal pace, like for like any 200-meter athlete, I want to make sure that they're running through the entire race. That they're doesn't mean that they have to run the full speed the whole time, but that they're not slowing down at the end or walking. That they're running the event as they should. Same thing for 100 meters and 400 meters. The 850 are a little bit different since you got build endurance and stuff, and we haven't had the athletes looking forward to do the longer endurance events in the last couple of years, but basically basically making sure that they have no problems running the event at practice, we'll put them in. And we'll also look at time. Like if someone's running a really quick 50 meters, then they should be at 100 meters or that sort of thing. And then I put some videos, a couple of ones. It's a good website, and it shows you how to run the 100 meters. Goes from the start, the acceleration phase, and then the finish phase. If you want to use starting blocks, is a good kind of tutorial on how to use them, how to set them up, how to make sure and how the athlete should be placed, positioned, and it's about a 10-minute video, but it's pretty good. And then if you want a good start for athletes without using starting blocks, the link below is pretty good. It's basically they use a 4-point stance without blocks to get a good start. We can go to the next slide, which is a long jumping event. Okay. Special Olympics offers both standing and running long jumps. So standing long jumps, the athlete must jump off 2 feet and then exit out of the pit. And then running long jumps, the athlete starts from a run, from a running start, jumps off 1 foot without going past the board or the DQ line. And for Special Olympics, they require for running long jump 1 meter. If an athlete for a standing jump can jump at least 1 meter, we will usually have them try running long jump. And then for running long jump, for like any new athlete, we kind of have them start maybe from a few steps just to kind of get the feel. Some athletes can pick it up with practice. Some athletes can't, but we try to work with them, and for the most part, usually the athletes that can consistent, especially younger athletes, we haven't had a problem with them not being able to do running long jump. And then I list some key points for the running long jump. The first one is the starting point. This is tricky, and then you want to build up speed, and then there's a couple of things you want to do with the last steps, and then what you want to do with the body position, and then landing. For the starting point, a good baseline is having an athlete run an odd number of steps from the long jump board. So especially if it's a new athlete, we might do 7, we might do 9 steps, and then see where they jump from there. And then this isn't going to be perfect because the strides aren't usually all the same, and the runs aren't all the same, but it's just kind of a notional point. And then we may back up or move the athlete up from there. Once we have a good starting point, point, we will mark it and then keep that measurement. So we will mark it for any future competition. So if you see, usually on a running long jump, you'll see lines of tape on the side. Those are starting points. And then the biggest thing with the starting points is we want to make sure the athlete gets to full speed right before the jump. So that's kind of where the number of steps comes in. Our really fast athletes might do 15. They might even do longer. But making sure that they get to full speed, and then during the approach, we want to make sure that the athlete is not as he's during the approach is looking straight ahead, not looking down. Looking down will slow you down a bit. And then the big thing that will really get a good jump are the last two steps. The second step, it's going to be a little bit longer step, and you want to land flat-footed, and then the final step is going to be a shorter step, and then that will allow your body to launch. And then the last key is the flight portion. Probably the easiest thing to do is have the athletes bring both feet forward, and then arms like a circle forward. But there's also you'll see people kind of do they call it a hang technique, right? Or hitch kick. The biggest thing with the while in air is just maintaining forward momentum, and then the landing. Make sure that when they land, they walk forward out of the track, so the spot doesn't get marked over. And I provided a couple links for step-by-step long jump techniques and then some beginners on how to do a long jump. And the biggest thing with long jump is practice and getting that starting point, and making sure the athletes are confident. We don't want the athletes to start a step before the jump or look down. So, and make sure that they get at least one good jump, and then if they get at least one clean jump, and then the final two jumps, and they can maybe go a little bit all out. But getting good score, getting a legal jump is most important. Okay, next one is the high jump slide. St. Mary's, in the past we had more high jumpers, but last year we had the last couple of years we've only had 2 high jumpers. But we would like to get more, but we have kind of issues sometimes getting it at practice. But the big thing with high jump is first you must have the appropriate equipment: high jump mat, stands, bars. If you practice at high school, most high schools have them. They may not let you use them, but we've been lucky. In most cases, we've gotten them to be used. Basis athletes must jump during the high jump. The athletes must jump off one foot, and they must not jump forward. They must jump backwards using the Fosbury flop method. Kind of tips for the high jump. It's kind of like doing a layup in basketball. If you're a left-footed jumper, you'll start on the right side. If you're a right-footed jumper, you start on the left foot on the left side. And then basically, you can do as many steps as you want, but typically they recommend kind of, I think 5 to 7 steps is probably all you need, because you just want to be under control in the approach. And the big thing is you kind of do like a half circle. And if you do the approach right, you will basically be in the right position to turn your body and jump over the bar. The big thing that people have problems with is and I didn't put on the slide, but the back arching. and that kind of just takes practice. And then there's a link in there for like some high jump techniques and training. Some places offer to do as a training technique they call scissoring, which is basically jumping straight forward over the bar. And some will do where you kind of jump from a standstill over a bar to work on back arches. But in all, the Special Olympics requires 1 meter, and you have to jump off 1 foot. The next event is next slide is mini jav. The first couple are just kind of rules from the Special Olympics. Just make sure that they get fouls, but they gotta be held by the grip with one hand only, and they must be thrown over the shoulder. And you may not sling it or hurl it. And they must be kind of you can't spin during the throw, and each throw is made from the edge of the arc. Now the athlete is allowed during the approach, which I think of the mini jav, which it's fairly long. I think it's like 10 meters, but the athlete can run during the approach as long as his body does not go over the throwing arc. Most people don't do a throwing, don't do a running approach during mini jav, but if the athlete can do it, you can definitely get some further distance. It's something you may think about at practice. And the big thing which for scoring is the tip of the mini jav must hit the ground first, otherwise it won't be scored. And the big thing with the mini jav is the release. If the mini jav is spinning, it's not going to go very far. So you almost want to come off like a kind of like a dart, or kind of like an actual javelin, where you throw it nice and straight and smooth, and it'll pick up distance. And then I posted a YouTube video. I think it's an actual Special Olympics video on kind of how to train somebody how to do a mini jav. This one's a little tricky for scoring because wind can be a factor. So just kind of take note that the scoring numbers could vary. Okay, next slide 16. This is a shot put. Special Olympics offers 2, 3K, and 4K events, and it's all depending on based on age and if you're male or female. So you're based on the age group, you're forced into the size of the shot put. Well, we'll have the athlete try shot put if they can at least throw 10 meters in a softball, especially for new athletes. And then equipment required is obviously the shot puts, and then you need a toe board. And we make sure when we're at practice that the athlete properly pushes the shot put and not throw it, as this could cause injuries. And then here's some basics. You want to put the shot put in the base of your fingers, not the palm. Spread your fingers slightly apart and use your thumb to prevent the shot from rolling off. And then you want to press the shot put to the area behind your on your neck, behind your jaw with your throwing hand. Point your target with the opposite hand, feet wide apart. Bend your back leg, and so you tilt backwards, and then you kind of just want to twist your body to your target. And then and when you're actually ready to push the shot put, you want to push off of your back foot, twist your hips, and then as your body to face the target direction of your shot put. You want to extend your arm and propel the shot at like a 45-degree angle. And then when you shoot the shot put, you flick your wrist similar to what you do to a basketball. And then I just provided all this in the link below. But the big thing with shot put is making sure that they're actually pushing the shot put from the neck, getting a good body momentum. Some people do take a few steps, which is fine, or the more advanced could spin. But for the most part, our guys just do kind of from a standing power approach. But we have one athlete that does like a two-step throw, and it works fine. But the big thing is really getting momentum from the back leg and your whole body coming forward. And then one of them is your body can't land outside the toe board, so you can't come forward if your body goes outside the toe board as far as touching the ground. That's a DQ. So sometimes that happens where people get so excited that they will throw a good shot put, but they actually come outside the toe board. So just take note. The slide 17 is relays. The Special Olympics offers 3 relays: 4x100, 4x200, which are run entirely in lanes, and then the 4x400, where the first leg is run entirely in lanes, and then during the second leg, the athlete can change lanes at the break point, which is the same as the 800 meter. In 2018, Special Olympics Maryland adopted a rule that the USTA adopted, that the fly zone is no longer acting as a fly zone or acceleration zone, that it's just basically extended exchange zones. Here's some relay tips. Kind of constructing the correct team. Generally, know where to put each person. Generally, the fastest person should go last, but that may not be always. If that person isn't great at receiving a handoff, you may want to put them somewhere else. To avoid injuries and poor exchanges, try not to have someone really fast handing it to someone really slow. So the athlete doesn't have to slow down. B, that the athlete won't run up into to one another. And then try to organize the team best as possible based on like abilities. This isn't always possible, but this will make for a better relay team. And for handoffs, we like to make sure that the athlete is moving during the handoff. If the athlete is experienced, you can do what is called blind handoff, where they're looking forward at the track. A way to work on this, as from the beginning, is just kind of start out from a short jog, and then and kind of just make sure the athlete receiving the baton is running forward as the runner is coming forward. Another relay drill we like to do is we have the relay team line up in the same order. So we'll have fourth, third, second, first leg in an order, and then we'll have them run together, and then we'll have the first leg athlete start off with the baton, hand it to the second will hand it to the third will hand it to the fourth, and the fourth will put it on the ground, and then the first leg athlete will pick up again. It doesn't have to be super fast, but it kind of gets them moving and kind of gets them receiving the baton and moving while they're receiving the baton. And then as they get used to it, you can go a little bit faster. And then I posted a link for some. This is specifically for 4x100, but some other drills that you can do. Slide 18 is Special Olympics does offer hurdles, so I posted a couple of videos. It kind of teaches people how to use hurdles. This just takes work. A, you have to have access to hurdles. B, you have to do it at practice, and you may only have one or two people that can do them, so it becomes tricky trying to work them into actual practice. But here's some videos that kind of helps. It's basically a rhythm. You want to kind of do the same pace and kind of like a 3-step run between the hurdles, and then you kind of like lunge forward. So if any, but it would be good to get some more hurdlers at summer games. So I think last year we only had a couple. So but here's some videos that give you some feedback. And our last slide is resources. So I just put what was at SOMD track and field, but I know often I know in the preseason webinars, Mike and Ron always provides a good listing of resources, and there's a ton of stuff out there. I kind of just put together this pretty quick. So I wish I could go more in depth and stuff. It's kind of hard on a PowerPoint without showing. And there's just so much stuff out there on any of the events. So with that, that's all I have.
Does anyone have any questions for Don? If you raise your hand through the webinar, I can unmute your line so you would be able to ask. So far, I'm not seeing any, but I'll give you guys another minute just to kind of think if you have anything that pops up with our season starting soon. I will also be creating a little SurveyMonkey quiz. It's going to be 5 quick questions. So I will distribute that along with all of the links that Don put together to help you for planning for your 2019 season. The way that I will update your certification is just if you fill out that SurveyMonkey, then I'll be able to say, yes, they participated in the webinar and they were paying attention, which is fantastic. So that will all be sent out to you tomorrow. I am not seeing any hands or any questions typed up. So Don, that must be what you just
actually, Kendall, this is
yes.
Mike. Hi. Hey, Don. Nice job there, sir. A question. Those of you, I coach track as well, and always good to get some input from folks. Aside from measuring off, with the long jump, aside from measuring off after you've worked out what the pacing is, do you have any ideas or suggestions for athletes who just don't have consistency in their run up? Anything that you guys have done that has helped with that?
Yeah, that's a big problem, because they might run faster in the beginning, they might run slow.
Yeah, or different length steps as well.
Yeah, and we kind of just preach that they should try to run the same as for each when in practice. Try to run it kind of the same for each jump. It doesn't always work, but that's what we kind of try to do. So we and also we try not to pull them too far back so they get too tired, or we want to get them at the acceleration point. But yeah, that's the tricky part is getting is that fact that they don't always run the same, and there's not really not really a great way. It's just trying to make sure that focus at practice that to try to have the same approach every time.
Okay. And then one other one. I know with our guys in shifting events for relays, I won't say we totally abandoned the blind handoff, but for almost everybody, we've gone to a palm up receiving because we had such difficulty in getting the where the incoming runner brings the baton up into the receiving hand. Have you guys is there anything that you've done that has kind of helped with that transition and made those exchanges clean?
We kind of run into the same problem.
Okay. That's reassuring in and of itself, though. So to know that.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, we make sure that, and we also make sure that the athlete does not try to change batons. Once it's in their hand, don't try to switch it to the other hand.
Right. Yeah, we do too. Yeah.
And we make sure that the athlete gives them a good, that they're holding it at the end of the baton, so that they can that they have a good piece to grab it to. As far as like the blind baton, sometimes it's just dependent on athletes. Some athletes will pick it up right away, and some athletes you can't. So
right.
And I think most cases we have all looking forward as well. There might be one or two on a given team that might be capable, but our really fast relay teams haven't run in a while, so yeah. So it kind of depends on the athlete, and sometimes what we found out too that works is sometimes it's hard to practice relays during like a full practice, but if you want to maybe have a separate practice with relay or a couple relay teams that may really need help, it's a little bit less commotion. It might help.
Okay. Well, and I toss that out to any of these, any of the folks. I see a lot of very experienced coaches on the line. If anyone has any other suggestions, and I'm not trying to monopolize, I'm just looking for any other hands up. So I'll toss the one other one that I wanted to ask you. I mean, not that you and I don't get to talk a lot, but for our lower ability athletes, sometimes getting them to do a clean start and actually a well-timed start can be a real challenge. And a lot of what we do is just regular repetition to completely get them acclimated to the gun, so that's not a factor, the surprise, but still they'll start even after everybody alongside them has started running. They'll still be paused there. Have you, or I'll toss it again to any of the other coaches on the line, have you done anything that you found successful to help with that?
I know for the starts, I know that one of the big problems we have is, for the most part, we don't have, sometimes people hesitate, but that could be just like on a case-by-case basis. It's not usually consistent with one athlete or another. The biggest problem we have is athletes at the very start running out of their lanes.
Right.
Because they get confused. At summer games, you do a decent job of kind of taping it off.
Oh, you mean at the curve where the lines cross? Yeah.
But still, they still sometimes get confused. So what we make sure is that the athlete knows what lane they're in, and that they look either at the relay marking or at the number and use that as a visual reference, not the lines. And then make sure that they're going straight. And usually, once they're going straight, they're fine. Okay.
And then one other just to toss in, and I'm sorry, I got a call about another issue in the middle, so I don't know if you mentioned this. We always find, again, shifting events for a minute, to shot put. We have a lot of athletes who have really good form, but wind up pushing the shot straight rather than getting any kind of an upward arc on it. one of the things that we've used and using it consistently so they're getting the same terminology is to reference doing a high five, to put their hand up. And that sort of forces the arm. First of all, it avoids a throw, but it also kind of forces the arm up into that upward angle with the shot. So I don't know if you've had any other solutions to that, again, where they have some really beautiful form, but just kind of goes straight out and then just loops right onto the ground.
We have that where we have athletes go straight down, or we have athletes where it goes kind of straight up.
Haven't had that one.
You know, where that. So yeah, no, we do kind of use that high five method for, like, especially new athletes that are having trouble with the form. And the biggest thing we also do is make sure that make sure that their body is not leaning and going forward. So at least you'll get some momentum, that they're not just doing it, but that the body's actually being propelled forward.
Okay. Well, cool. I mean, I would toss it to everybody else here for any other kind of things. Don's got a great deal of expertise on this. Any other particular challenges that you've got or you've had with your athletes, either to Don or again to the rest of the group while you have a few minutes here? Think of your most the greatest challenge you've had with training an athlete in one of the different various track events, and can use this panel of experts here. Looks like we got a question typed in.
Yep. So sorry, I'm just trying to read it all. We have a question from Joyce Powell, and it is, not sure if this will go through. Adam and I were talking about the long jump. One thing we have done in Baltimore County is put orange cones on either side of toe board and tell athletes to start their jump right before they see the cone. So this isn't a question, it's just a suggestion for the group. So thank you, Joyce.
Yeah, and some athletes that we have that consistently DQ, we tell them, sometimes they're trying and land on the spot itself. We tell them, hey, just jump before the spot. Because they do use that as a visual reference, and they try to land exactly on the spot, and sometimes that helps too. So,
any thought on selecting high jumpers who might have the potential to be a high jumper?
And I would say if you're consistently jumping over, like, especially if you're jumping like 4 meters and the running long jump, you definitely can do high jump. So as a gauge is if you have a good long jumper that's at least 3.5 to 4 meters, they definitely have the ability to do high jump.
Yeah, I mean, we usually do, and actually, I mean, Kim Perry is on. I don't know if Kim, if you want to share how you kind of figure out who you want to try with high jump. We'd love to get more high jumpers from more counties with that. But Kim, not to put you on the spot, but can we open up her line? I just want to try to get some other people talking for a moment.
Sure. So, Kim, I believe you are self-muted. So if you unmute your line. Oh, no. So it's still saying you're self-muted.
Okay, well, I'm sorry to put you on the spot there with tech being an issue, so, okay. Yeah, I don't, okay, this is just an incredible opportunity to have to run an idea or a question by an expert with a whole panel of experts listening in and able to contribute. So I'm sure different folks have different challenges that they could ask about.
Hey, Don. One question that did pop up in the coaches training this past week, and the in-person one, was how do you motivate an athlete? So if they're running a 50 meter, but you know that they can take that next step up to a 100 meter or even a 200 meter, do you have any tips or tricks for how you not only train them to do that, but also how you kind of get them to accept that they can do that event and really push them to that?
Sometimes you might see if there's like if there's a buddy of theirs, maybe have them race together at practice. Also, if we know that they can do something and that they're good at it, we all, we just try to encourage them and see what they like. And we also sometimes use summer games as a kind of as a motivator that if you're not if you can't do a certain thing that you may not be able to go. I mean, we don't always. I mean, that's kind of more for motivation, not as a literal idea. But yeah, sometimes if there's kind of kids their age or athletes their age and kind of have a fun challenge at practice, that's sometimes fun too. So, sometimes I can motivate them.
Looks like Kim has her line open. Kim, are you there? We hopefully should be able to hear you. Oh, it's okay. Oh well. Actually, I'm sorry to sort of almost be taking over for a moment. Joyce, your line's open. You want to share what you typed in about the assessment there for high jump?
Mike, you talking to me?
Yes, I am.
Oh, okay. I saw that it unmuted, but I didn't see you say my name. No, I was just saying, when Kim couldn't isn't unmuted, Adam and I were just talking about how at the beginning we take anybody who does running long jump and just kind of run them through the area around the high jump. So just sort of running in circles just to get the idea of the approach, and then letting them just put one knee up, sort of the scissor kick style, and just trying to let them get used to the idea of jumping up or falling onto the pit and rolling off the back of it. And that kind of helps so that they're not afraid of it as much with no crossbar. And it also allows the coaches to watch their form and just watch their style and just their height and all the different factors that go into deciding whether it's somebody who might be a potential high jumper for training throughout the season. Plus, they all think it's fun to do that anyway, so it gives them a chance to try it, even if they're not going to continue with high jump.
Yeah, they get to jump on the big cushion.
But you really can see a lot when you watch how they do that, as far as how high they can get off the ground and just form, and if they even comprehend the process of what they need to do. It gives you a chance to see all of that without potential injury because you don't have the bar up there.
Yeah, we kind of do the same thing.
Yeah, it's kind of like what we all do in the morning at summer games anyway, when they're all out there.
Yeah, and then
just something to think about.
And then Bill Wood used to give a training at summer games, and he would kind of have them do the same thing. Start with the running, and then just with jumping without the bar.
It's also, you mentioned Bill, and it made me realize too, and we lost it last year, but we had sort of a nylon ripcord looking thing that you could Velcro around the poles, and that's really good for training at the beginning because it literally just rips as they hit it. So before you actually start putting the crossbar up or as they're going higher and increasing the height, it's just a softer and safer way to practice, and it's a little bit less intimidating to the athletes. So we need to look into getting another one of those. I'd gotten one from Bill a number of years ago.
Yeah, cool. At the risk of having a similar challenge that we had with Kim, John Follett, if it's okay to put you on the spot for a moment, and your line's open. One of the challenges that I know a lot of folks have, and I know you've had a great deal of success with this, is teaching pacing for your distance runners, or in the case now, some of your distance walkers, to map out the endurance and don't become the rabbit for too long. Do you have any pointers or suggestions for folks who maybe have avoided those longer races that might help them? John, you there? Okay, looks like we may have some challenges with John Follett. Okay, I'll leave it be.
We did hear from Kim about selecting high jumpers, so she messaged in the question pane and said that she watches the running long jumpers form and height to kind of see who would be a good fit for the high jump.
Gotcha, that's great.
Sometimes we have trouble trying to encourage athletes to do high jump because it's a kind of a new event. But usually once they start it, most athletes really like it. So.
All right, John has messaged me, so we are trying to get his line open so we can all hear him.
Okay, John, are you near your wife? We can open Vicky's line too, if that helps. That's assuming Vicky will share. So, okay.
We're not together.
Oh.
I'm
okay.
upstairs, he's downstairs.
Okay.
But I'm unmuted.
Yes, you are.
Well, I can try to explain what he does.
That would be great. Sure.
Oh, he's coming up here to join me.
Hey, Mike.
Hey, John.
I think one of the things that helps them understand the idea of needing to pace is that I talk about, in some of the races that I've done, how painful it is when you're trying to finish after having gone out too fast. And sometimes I just let them go out too fast so that they too can experience the joy of hitting the wall. But I know with Lee especially, we really had trouble when we were trying to get him to move up to the 1500 meter. He would take off at a 200 meter pace, and I mean, he'd just be sucking wind after the first 400 meters. And I think that's one of the things that really helps them understand the need for pacing. And a lot of times what I will do is I'll just get out there and run with them. And, just constant verbal reminder of, and one thing I do is I say, nobody passes me, to get them the idea of what a proper pace is. We had one gentleman that was another long distance runner that actually set up a whole time chart for Kenny when he was trying to do the 1500 meters for the first time. And it was kind of funny because somebody even commented that Kenny was the only runner they'd ever seen actually doing the final stretch, looking at his watch. So that was one thing that helped Kenny.
Another thing that we do is that for our longer distance runners, we have people in the four corners that kind of tell them you're going too fast, because we know their times, and we always tell them their times. They know what their personal best is, and I know that they know that they're trying to do better, but we don't want to hurt them. So by having people positioned, having volunteers positioned around the course or with the laps that they do, they can give verbal feedback as they come around.
Now, we have to be careful with that because that unfortunately can be considered coaching if it's during an actual competition.
Right. Do you do anything to kind of transfer that to like a visual marker on the track or anything like that?
No.
Okay.
No, we just try to always make sure that whoever is the timer at the at the finish line is calling out the time so that they are getting that feedback and it's not coming from us.
Mm-hmm. Oh, so it's not just they know their time, but they know their lap time or what it should be.
Yes.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
Okay.
Other than that, I can't think of anything right now.
Okay. Cool. Oh, not sure what that was, but okay.
Does anyone else have any topics they might want to bring up for the good of the group to bounce ideas off of each other? So far, I'm not seeing any new questions or hands raised. Oh, it looks like we have a new question.
Oh, cool.
Oh, yes. Yeah, so back to the high jump. This is from Joyce. Is making sure to check for the negative X-ray on medical if an athlete has Down syndrome. Joyce, would you like me to open up your line so you could talk a little bit more about this? Your line is open if you would like to.
Hey, yeah, I just thought about that afterwards. Most people probably already know, but persons with Down syndrome can have an instability in their neck. And on the medical, it's called atlantoaxial instability. And it's common practice when they have a physical, if you have Down syndrome, that at some point in your life, this will be x-rayed. And there's just a little place to check it off. A lot of times it gets missed on medicals and it's not really a big deal. But if you notice that they have Down syndrome, you do need to have the doctor go back and clarify it. And just for obvious reasons, in the way you jump, and it's similar with soccer, the way you might head a ball, even though we don't do heading, they cannot do certain events such as high jump if that x-ray tests positive because their neck muscles are not stable enough to handle that. So if you're never done high jump and you're planning on doing it and you have anyone with Down syndrome, just make sure that part was completed and that it's negative. We have it for phys ed issues in the school system too. There's certain things we have to look at. So just something to think about.
Also, Rennie Springhill, who was at the Coaching Special Olympics athlete session on Saturday, made the point that his son did have the instability, at least it showed up on the x-ray. And over time, it basically closed the gap that's there. So it can change. So it's worth keeping an eye on that.
Yeah,
the only other thing that I want to toss out, not this is not a sponsor, we get no money from them, but did want to share it with folks. M&F Track and Field, also known as Everything Track and Field. It's a major supplier. We use them for a lot of stuff at our local track program, and Special Olympics headquarters uses them a bit. I think it's until March 5th or 6th is doing free shipping. Their prices are generally pretty good, but what that helps with significantly, like if you need new shots, not having to pay shipping on them can be a big savings. So again, it's M&F Track and Field, or Everything Track and Field. If you're in the market for some equipment, that's something you may want to consider. Again, we get no money from them. It's not a corporate thing, but did want to pass that on coach to coach.
Awesome. Thank you, Mike.
Sure.
Well, if there is nothing else that anyone can think of that they want to discuss, I just first off wanted to thank all of you for logging on tonight. I know how busy of a time of year it is, so thank you for making the time to learn a little bit more about this sport. And thank you, Don, for putting this all together, for really leading the way with it. So thank you, everyone. Have a great night.
Okay, yeah, thanks, no problem. I wish I had a little bit more time to make it a little bit thorough, but I was limited. But
We got to pick your brain quite a bit there. Thanks, sir.
Oh, no problem.